Watching a smug professional destroy a multi-million-dollar corporation in less than a month is a rare kind of entertainment. Our new director, Gideon Cross, stood at the front of the conference room, gripping a laser pointer like a weapon. His colourful presentation displayed one of his greatest cost-saving victories. "My first decision," he announced proudly, "is to eliminate the yearly operational flights to Europe. They are unnecessary expenses." The room fell silent. For more than 20 years, I had managed our international regulatory compliance. Those trips to Germany were not vacations. They were essential. I had spent decades building relationships with European regulators, solving problems before they became disasters, and ensuring our paperwork remained flawless. One misplaced character on a shipping manifest could stop millions of dollars in merchandise at a border. Gideon, however, had recently graduated from business school and believed every problem could be solved with a spreadsheet. He had no understanding of the human relationships behind our international operations. He had never spent midnight on the phone with a German official trying to resolve a licensing issue before a shipment was seized. He had never dealt with the complicated renewal systems that kept our company legally operational across Europe. To him, my flights were simply expensive habits maintained by an outdated employee. During his first staff meeting, Gideon officially stripped me of my authority. The entire European renewal portfolio was transferred to his personal assistant, Mara Bell, who barely understood corporate tax regulations. I simply nodded. "Understood," I said. Arguing with ignorance had never been one of my hobbies. That afternoon, I cancelled my upcoming flight and forwarded every licensing archive to Mara. Gideon was copied on the email. I politely highlighted the renewal deadlines, required documents, and consequences of missing even one submission. Neither of them replied. That told me everything I needed to know. Over the next several weeks, Gideon held endless workshops about efficiency and eliminating unnecessary wait. During meetings, he made smug comments about older employees who depended on legacy procedures. I never reacted. Instead, I began documenting everything. Every email, every instruction, every warning, every delegation of responsibility. I saved the records onto a secure drive and kept it beneath my desk. During a quarterly financial meeting, Gideon proudly presented his projected savings. One slide specifically celebrated the elimination of my German travel. "Digital signatures are better than handshakes," he declared. The finance team laughed. I remained silent. My private countdown showed that the European registration deadline was now only 2 weeks away, and foreign regulators did not send friendly reminders. The deadline arrived quietly. No warning sirens sounded. No executive received a dramatic phone call. The calendar simply moved forward while everyone in the office continued pretending that the European renewals were being handled. Mara, meanwhile, posted vacation photographs from a tropical resort. I saw them while reviewing the final documents in our archive. The registration deadline had passed. I checked the system twice. Then a third time. The required certificates had not been renewed. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen. For 20 years, I had prevented exactly this kind of disaster. Now I did nothing. 3 days later, on a Thursday morning, the global logistics channel suddenly stopped working. The first alert came from our regional office in Poland. "Urgent. Operational databases inaccessible." Minutes later, Germany sent another message. Our operational status had been revoked because the required certificates had expired. A shipment of temperature-sensitive goods was sitting at a European port, accumulating storage fees by the hour. Gideon immediately panicked. "Get it on this," he shouted. "It's obviously a technical problem." The lead engineer arrived, reviewed the situation, and calmly shook his head. "This isn't an IT failure," he said. "The company's legal authorization to operate in Europe has expired." The room went silent. Gideon stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It means the system is working exactly as designed." Within minutes, Mara sent me an urgent message. "Please help. We need you immediately." I opened the message, read it, and then forwarded the original email Gideon had sent weeks earlier. It clearly stated that all European licensing responsibilities had been transferred to his team. I added nothing. The next morning, the Chief Executive Officer, Martin Vale, called an emergency meeting in the main boardroom. Everyone was there: Gideon, Mara, the finance department, the legal team, and me. Martin walked into the room carrying a certified courier envelope. He placed it on the table with a heavy slap. "Our daily penalties," he said. are now €100,000. Nobody moved. The total exposure has already passed 2 million. A finance director quietly whispered something to him. Martin's expression hardened. Our largest international clients are threatening legal action. Gideon immediately began talking. He blamed Mara, then the legal department, then the old system, then somehow, the people who had failed to stop him from making the decision. Mara looked terrified. I said nothing. Instead, I opened my laptop and connected it to the conference screen. A complete timeline appeared. The original cost-cutting directive, the transfer of responsibility, my warnings, the approaching deadlines, the unanswered emails. Every document carried an official timestamp and electronic receipt. The room became completely silent. Martin stared at the screen. Then he looked at Gideon. Is this accurate? Gideon opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Martin reached into his pocket and removed his security badge. Hand yours over. Gideon's face turned white. For the first time since his arrival, he had no presentation to hide behind. Gideon slowly removed his security badge and placed it on the table. Martin didn't say another word. The arrogant director, who had arrived promising to modernize the company, walked out of the boardroom less than a month later, escorted by security and surrounded by the consequences of his own decisions. Mara remained behind, crying quietly. I felt no satisfaction watching her suffer. She had been unqualified, but Gideon had placed her in a position she never should have held. Later that afternoon, Martin summoned me to his corner office. He looked exhausted. The European crisis had already cost the company millions, and the situation was getting worse by the hour. He pushed a new contract across the mahogany desk. We need you back in control, he said. Name your conditions. I glanced at the proposal. It included a significant promotion, a substantial salary increase, expanded authority, and a generous retention bonus. Under different circumstances, I might have considered it. Instead, I placed my own document on top of his contract. Martin looked down. Then he looked at me. Is that your resignation? Yes. He leaned back in his chair. After everything that happened, you're leaving. I didn't leave, I said calmly. You allowed someone to remove me from the work I had spent 20 years protecting. Martin lowered his eyes. He knew I was right. I'm sorry, he said. I believe you. But you're still leaving. Yes. He gave a tired nod. I had already made my decision. For years, I had sacrificed holidays, weekends, and personal time to protect a company that had ultimately allowed an inexperienced executive to dismiss my expertise with a single presentation slide. I had no interest in returning to repair a machine that had deliberately removed one of its most important parts. My colleagues watched in stunned silence as I packed my belongings. I took my frame certifications, a few photographs, and the small plant that had somehow survived 20 years in my office. Then I walked out. The summer air felt warm against my face. For the first time in decades, I had nowhere I needed to be. The next morning, I used my savings to purchase a first-class ticket to Germany. As the plane climbed above the Atlantic, I raised a glass of champagne and looked through the window at the clouds below. Somewhere behind me, the corporation was still fighting millions in penalties, angry clients, and regulatory consequences. I felt no guilt. I had warned them. I had documented everything, and I had done my job. What happened after they removed me was no longer my responsibility. True competence cannot be replaced by business school buzzwords, colourful charts, or aggressive confidence. And sometimes, the most powerful response to arrogance is not an argument. It is silence. Then, when the consequences finally arrive, you simply walk away.